All right, let's go live on Facebook. All right, hey everyone, welcome. We're just getting started with all the back office stuff. Take a seat. The live stream is being prepared. Amanda, do you want to put your image, your PowerPoint full screen? Yes. All right, there we go. We're live to the world. Okay. Hey everyone. Sorry, I'm just sorting out my computer so that we have so that I can actually bring out the things I'm going to bring up on demand and not have like 5,000 windows to look at. Newsletter. Oh. All right. All right. All right. Hooray. Who's here? I'm quite excited to see who is on the webinar today. Oh, I lost my Zoom window. I know it's here. Hi everyone. Clearly I'm really out of practice. Hey, who's here? Oh, hi Abigail. Hi people in chat. Hey Judy, someone who's I can't see because the chat's too small. Judy Katz from Northwest Indiana. So like a new state for me. Hi Miroslav in Belgrade. Hi Harriet in Larchmont, New York. That's also I feel a new place. Hello, just let us know where you are. If you're on the East Coast, I hope you're staying safe. This is a good excuse for you guys to stay inside. Hey, Jonathan in Austin. Hey, Lawrence in Williamstown in the Berkshire Hills of Western Massachusetts. That's very, very specific. Susan in New York. I just had to say Susan. Hey, Miriam in South London. I don't know if that really counts. Hey, Mara in New York. Sarit in Arad. Abigail in Malay Adamu, who writes for Israel 21C. You should definitely not take this as gospel, Abigail. This is a very, very off-the-record webinar. Bobby in Skokie, Susan in Philly, Carol in Jerusalem, Michelle in New York, Joy in Hyde Park, Chicago. Hi, Joy and John. Margaret, Toronto, Carol in Central Florida, Barbara in Binghamton, New York. You know what, Jay? I'll be here forever.
Let me welcome
nearly catching up, but it was not going to happen before
the hour. At the top of the hour, let's just welcome everybody. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining here on the chat feature. We're over 100 people here on the Zoom. Are we live on Facebook as well, Lawrence? Yes, good. There's always another couple dozen on Facebook. So welcome from everywhere. Thanks for chatting with us and letting us know how you feel and where you're from. Appreciate it a lot. And if you have questions for the panelists as the evening goes on, please put them in the question and answer section. And we'll keep that straight and we'll answer them as we go. And if there's crucial issues to answer all along, I'll interrupt. But we have an exciting night ahead of us about, the finally contained Jerusalem fires, contained but not containable in the long run. We'll learn all about the issues around forest management and how climate change is affecting that and how it's affected some of our staff members very personally in their lives and personally in their jobs, professionally in their jobs. But anyway, so thank you all to our hardworking board members and staff in the United States and Canada and in England and in the UK. Well, we don't have staff, but we have board members. Appreciate very much your support year round, and especially in times like times of crisis. This is a crisis for, I would say, it's certainly a warning sign for Israel and the environmental movement and nature conservation. Not something that we're actually currently raising money for right now because our work isn't so directly affected by the fire, but it is very directed in a very, very important ways. We will learn about that soon. I think we're up to 126 participants. What time is it now? We're a couple of minutes after the hour. Give it another minute or two for people to join. welcome from all over. And if you want to, you can add in your in the chat feature which natural disaster your area of the world is facing or has faced recently. Wildfires all over the world, all over the West, Western United States and Canada, that is. Today I read, I believe it was today, that in Greenland, in a part of Greenland, rain fell for the first time ever in recorded history instead of snow. And I know our Canadian friends are extremely worried about that melting global ice cap and what that means up there. Hurricanes on the East Coast and on the West Coast of the United States so far, at least the West Coast of Mexico, I think I saw today or yesterday. And the wildfires in the Pacific Northwest. Wildfires are incredible. It's probably a good segue to what we're going to talk about tonight. And here, I think at 3 minutes after the hour, people are still joining, but we'll begin our webinar. So welcome people. I'll give them just another minute to join from wherever. With us tonight, though, we have three very distinguished guests. First of all, we have Lawrence doing back office. Usually it's been Avi Sadiv in Toronto in the last few months here, maybe after many months of Lawrence producing all of these. Lawrence is now back office from his home in Modi'in. I'm Jay Shofet coming to you here from Tel Aviv, my home. It's 8 p.m. Israel time. And with us is our Amanda Lind and Yael Hammerman-Soler. And will be joining us in a bit, Amir Balaban. And I will introduce everybody now. I think we have people coming in from everywhere. Oh, Norbert is in France and Chris in New Jersey. There's so many, they're all over New York and all the continents, Maryland, everything's represented here. Really appreciate everybody's interest and support. So we'll get to the evening. I will just start with get everybody on the same page about this fire, which burned for 3 days in the middle of the week. Israel gave it everything it got that it has in firefighting. Eight of our 8 planes took part in it, and round-the-clock firefighters from all over Israel were battling it for 3 days until it was finally contained. Several yishuvim, mostly moshavim, and a psychiatric hospital were evacuated very successfully. Lives were not lost. I think a couple pets were lost, but human lives were not lost, despite the fact that this is one of the larger fires of the last decade and in general in Israel. 6,200 dunams were burned, which it doesn't sound a lot like for those of you in the Pacific Northwest or in California. I know I just looked up the statistic in the entire Western United States in 2020, 4.5 million acres of wildfire burned. So our 6,200 doesn't seem great, but we can't compare a tiny blotch of forest in the most important ecological corridors in our north-south country, right in the center of country, right on the outskirts of Jerusalem. Those 6,000 dunams are precious, precious, precious to nature conservation, to biodiversity in the area. And that's what we're going to hear about. We also in this fire, we thought about asking for aid. Greece offered us aid. Just a couple of weeks ago, we offered Greece aid and sent a team over there. Turns out we didn't need Greece's aid, but the Palestinian Authority offered aid in the form of a firefighting team. And surprisingly, interestingly, we accepted that. We accepted that aid, and a team of 20 Palestinian firefighters were battling for a day and a half as well. Interesting because in the environmental movement here, and we've spoken about it before, there hasn't been much work with the Palestinians, and the whole concept of normalizing the conflict through work, even on things like environmentalism, has been in decline in recent years. So that was an interesting new development. But the real question and the real issues now are about the fire itself, how it affected Israel, what we're going to be doing about it, what's happening in the aftermath. And to that end, we have a couple of our professionals with us right now who are going to be joining and sharing their photographs from what happened. Amanda Lind is the operations manager and volunteer coordinator, very important position for an organization like ours, that volunteer coordination at the Gazelle Valley Park in Jerusalem, where we breed gazelles to return to the wild. And her boss, Yael Hammerman-Soler, is with us as well. She's coming to us actually from Gan Michael, I understand. But she lives, Amanda lives in Jerusalem, and we'll be talking about her experiences. And Yael lives in Moshav Ramat Raziel, right in the heart of the flames. And we'll talk about her concerns and her experiences that fateful day and the next 3 days, because it was really, really crazy here this week. So
before you get started, Jay, I just need to fact check you that it was 6,200 acres of land burned, not 6,200 dunam. So it's,
6,200, did I say dunam? I meant acres. Yes, I meant acres, and I compared it to 4.5 million acres in the wildfires in the States in all of 2020. So yeah, but it's a precious 6,200 acres. It's all mini Israel in terms of even our wild spaces, but these ecological corridors are so important. Anyway, Amanda, I believe you're going to start with some photos of what the land looked like before and after, what we're looking at right now, as a matter of fact. So please, looking forward to the webinar.
Okay. Hi. Well, this all started for me exactly a week ago. I landed in Ben Gurion. I was coming back from my family in England, and we drove up into the hills, and at the Sataf junction, the sky was red. The sky was burning, and there was police everywhere stopping everybody from going in that direction. And so I landed straight into quarantine, of course, but also into this burning inferno. The air was thick with smoke, and you could hear the planes above firefighting. Now, what you're looking at is the view exactly where the sky was red. This is my view from my house. It looks towards the Sataf, and that's a view on a good morning where I can see Amir Balaban's house almost on the hill. We're looking at the Sorek Valley, and this is not smoke, this is mist on a beautiful morning, and this is what it looks like when it's all serene. But this is what it looked like on, I think this was on Monday, when the fire was restarting. There were stages to the fire. And so the smoke is coming over from the Sataf Reserve, from Beit Meal, and you can see, it looks here, it's white, but then it starts getting heavier and heavier and starts filling the sky, and you really just go inside. This is when I stopped taking pictures, because you had to go inside. This is from another view from somebody else in Midaseret. This is what people were seeing, and it is a nightmare. It's like a bad movie. People are, the planes are going overhead. It sounds like that they're like bombing like an old war film, like the old planes. And they're going round and round in pairs constantly. This is from the road going up to Jerusalem. I think this is Yael's photograph, or one of her neighbors. This is what it looked like on the ground as it started. It got worse than this, much worse. People have posted pictures, but I wasn't going to post other people's pictures without their permission. And this is the smoke, choking smoke. Now with our, and this picture is actually the Gazelle Valley. This is what it looks like as it comes in. The smoke is drawn into Jerusalem. And so it blocks out the sun. And so it also has this kind of Armageddon feel to it, which affects the gazelles. The gazelles are actually looking for a way out. They want to escape. And you can imagine in the wild what's happening. This is what's happening with the sky filled with smoke. And here, this was the third day, they brought in the big military airplanes that were putting in the flame retardant. And of course, this in itself is poisoning the land in another way. But that's the end of my photographs, and I will stop sharing. and then we can talk about it. Yeah.
Hi. So Lawrence asked me to tell about my experience. So we were actually on vacation. I have 4 kids. And we started getting on the WhatsApp group of our village. People were starting to ask about the smoke that they saw that it was starting to come from Bet Meir. And suddenly there was one WhatsApp that said the fire is crawling up the Kisalon valley, which means it crossed the part of the valley and it started going up to Ramat Raziel, where we live. Half an hour later, we got a call to evacuate the village. As I said, we were on vacation on the beach. And of course, we started to try to understand what's going on with our house, what's happening. Everybody left the village. A few people stayed to just, to save what's left from the village, and they worked all night. Actually, my husband tried to go back to help with saving the village. We understood that for 3 hours there were no firefighters coming to the village because they were trying to fight the fire in other places. And by the time my husband could reach the village, we were told that without the people that were staying there, just opening the garden water and taking control of doing what the firefighters could have done, the village would have burned down. And we see in pictures, Lawrence, do you want to show some pictures? That the fire, there is like a green island in the Ramat Raziel village, because of the people who actually were standing there for 3 days and not allowing the fire to enter the village. As I said, my husband went back and helped people in the village, and we were here trying to get contact to understand what's happening. After a few hours, Amir actually sent me a picture to show me my house. And he said, look, this is your house, it's okay. The side of my house wasn't injured and nothing happened. But there are very, very sad stories from people in the village. One guy has a harp studio. He builds harps, and it was burned down completely. When he told us his story, we understood that nobody would insure him because he's on the forest. He's on the edge of the forest, so he couldn't get insurance. So his whole life work was burned down. Now we're trying to raise some money in the village to help him. There was some animals, some pets that were burned. And people lost a lot of things in this fire. I'm very, very happy to say that we were fine. Nothing happened to my family, nothing happened to my house. But as my husband was there, we understood that beside the fire, there's a lot of plastic and rubbish that people buried in open spaces surrounding the village, and they just kept burning and burning. Today it's still burning because it's just lots of plastic and rubbish and asbestos, and it's just burning underneath the ground, and the burning doesn't stop. So we keep getting alerts from people for another place is burning. We decided to stay here on the seaside and the seaside and the beach, so our kids won't smell the pollution. Tomorrow we're gonna go back But this was our experience of this fire.
Yeah, wow. A question about it. Do you know, is the Ministry of Environmental Protection on top of that toxic air pollution? Have they been issuing warnings? And
yeah, so actually my husband worked in the Ministry of Environment for a long time.
I'm aware.
So he was the one that identified it was asbestos.
Wow.
And we're trying now to find out who buried it, because the ministry just it doesn't take care of things that were buried by residents on their grounds. Today we found out it belongs who it belongs to, and it's now kind of a legal problem because the Ministry of Environment doesn't have the resources to take care of it, and they're trying to sue the people who actually buried it. But
wow.
The thing is that now there is pollution, and it keeps on burning, and nobody takes care of it.
Is there any solution? Is the fire department on top of it? Is there any way they can put it out?
The fire department is not responsible for it because the burning, you know, we can stop the fire, but it comes again and again. It's a problem of pollution of the ground.
Yeah.
And I wrote in a post in the WhatsApp group of the people in the SPNI that it you know, we think about what we've done to Earth, people. I mean, the fire is one thing, but when you understand what we buried underground, people just put things and I don't know, they cover it with a little bit of soil and they think it disappears, but it doesn't. It's there and it pollutes the earth. And this is just one bit that we found out because of this fire. And it's, you know, it's something we have to think about, what we leave in the earth we live in, and how we don't respect it.
Very worrisome. So let's move along from the pollution and the destruction under the earth.
Let's show, Jay, can we show the video? I want to show Yael's video.
Great. I was just going to say, and Lawrence is going to put up either pictures or videos.
All right, man.
So we're starting with pictures of the video.
No, here's a video.
Okay, here's a video of the aftermath. What happened? It's almost 4-minute video. Are we going to talk over it?
You can talk over it, everyone. Hold on, just get it going.
Okay. So here we see a shoresh.
Why is it
so laggy? Elderly home in Shoresh village.
Okay. Oh, mine says not happy.
It's very slow.
Yeah, I know. Why is it so slow? Maybe if we turn off our videos.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's me. It's me. It's me.
Modi, City of the Future.
There we go. Hold on. There we go. There we go.
Okay, so this is Shoresh, and we're going down to the.
Okay, now it's going to chance to buffer. Okay, go.
Yeah. So this is about where the fire started. And it just spread like we're flying with the video. It spread down to the valley, and it started climbing up towards Ramat Raziel. Okay, for some reason it stopped.
I'm just going to say that when we were talking about
nature
pollution, that many places, Tzuba and Givat Yarim, they were all evacuated for over 4 days because of the smoke. They weren't allowing people back because you just couldn't breathe in them.
Lawrence, the film isn't running very well. Maybe I should share some of the. Lawrence?
Go share your thing. We'll come back to the video hopefully later. I'll try and get it to work.
Okay, can you hear me?
We hear you.
So,
we hear
good
you.
evening. Good evening from Mevaseret Zion. 10-minute drive away from the wildfire, the previous wildfire fire. On Sunday afternoon, I was filming north of the forest fire, and I noticed planes coming in towards Jerusalem to start extinguishing the forest fire. The morning after, although I wanted to go and document the site, I had to take a team of reporters to film kingfishers along the coast. But once I finished working with them, I set back towards Jerusalem and entered the area where the fire was raging. One of the background stories that is very important to understand is that since 1948, there have been a lot of efforts in reforesting the landscape of Israel. Most of this work has been done by Kakal, the JNF, and it's been a trademark of the new established state. One of the main methods of forestation is the use of pine trees, which are ideal for quick growth and creating a green canopy. This is a tree usually used for the wood industry, and it has been used very extensively in Israel since Israel's independence. This has an enormous effect on the way Israel is adapting to climate change and should adapt to climate change, because pine forests are very, very dangerous forests. And I will talk about this a little bit later.
Amir, if I could interrupt you for 1 second, because I didn't introduce you in the beginning. And then you just took, I just want to make sure everybody knows, basically man needs no introduction. In Israel as well, he's a popular face on television explaining nature to the Israeli public. Amir Balaban is currently the director of urban nature in SPNI, but a senior ecologist, birder, founder of the JBO, and behind the Gazelle Valley Park as well, the go-to ecologist on Israeli airwaves. So thank you, Amir, for being with us and sharing your personal and professional experiences.
Thanks, Jay. So as I said, a lot of my work involves in documenting nature in Israel. And one of the documentations that you can see now is the area that was burned a few days ago. And one of the reasons this area is so important, it's one of the two main establishing sites of the once extinct Persian fallow deer that has been reintroduced to Israel by the National Parks Authority. This actual buck was released 6-7 years ago on the Harta Yassim Nature Reserve. And you can see it's an enormous beast. This was filmed last year, exactly the same time. That means it's we're in the beginning of the rut. And I was actually planning this week to start filming them again in the peak of the rut season. So this fire actually exploded in Mount Tayasim Nature Reserve exactly when this relation was about to start the rut. So when we're talking about wildfires, it's not only people who suffer, and it's the danger that the danger people face when these wildfires occur, but it has an enormous effect on the ecology of a large tract of land, specifically on rare animals. So this typical woodland that you can see, which is mixed Mediterranean scrub and pine forest, is very typical to the hills of Jerusalem. So the next thing I will show you is another member of the indigenous species that thrive in Mount Ayasim Nature Reserve. This is the two-tailed pasha, one of our most beautiful tropical butterflies. You know that Israel is very unique because it has a very rare combination of habitats that are limited to very small areas, but concentrated in one geographical site. That means we have fallow deers from Iran, and we have the two-tailed pasha, which is a subtropical species that occurs from Africa northward. So Mount Ayasim was struck very severely by this fire. And the pictures I'll show you are from Mount Ayasim. And although there's a lot of natural regeneration with the Mediterranean scrub and woodland, the damage is very, very, very severe. So I would like to talk about a global context. Wildfires or forest fires are beginning to be a major problem worldwide. And this has to do with global warming and the fact that we have very severe weather all over the world. This means we have very severe heat waves, and we also have a lot of strong rains and a lot of very severe climatic phenomena. Summertime and also winter, and you can see this map is a map made by NASA. It's made by satellites, and it exposes the severity of wildfires all over the globe in one specific moment. So you can see that South America, the southern part of Africa, a lot of Northern Hemisphere sites are actually burning intensively. This has a very severe effect directly on people and on wildlife, and an accumulative effect on CO in our atmosphere. So we have a big problem on our hands, and the question is, how do we manage our nature, our habitats, in order to mitigate this phenomenon? This is a very, very crucial question, because in many areas like Siberia or large tracts of forests in North America, management is not an issue. We're talking about very large tracts of land, and management is nearly impossible. But in the Middle East, where our area is very limited, we have to start managing our ecosystem in such a way that we mitigate the effect of forest fires. And here you see a map of the recent fire, and you can see where it started more or less on the left side, on the west, and it was taken with the wind, with the westerly wind, very intensively and very quickly towards Jerusalem. So basically, you can see by the intensity of the color, the darker it is, the higher the intensity is, and the lower, the paler colors. You can see that most of the high intensity fire originates in the pine groves that were planted from the 1950s, 60s to the 1970s. So these pine forests that have matured have become a liability. They have become a liability, and they have been managed, but not enough. So what we see, the end result is a very, very severe effect that was probably enhanced by a very warm summer, and we had a very warm spell in the beginning of the month. which made the forest very susceptible to fire. And the other thing is, you must remember that Israel is a very, very densely populated country. Not only densely populated, but also we are living in a very volatile area. This satellite image shows 3 areas where the fire was set simultaneously. Now, when you see this pattern, there's a very, very likely chance that this was a man-made fire. This was done on purpose. So we must understand that not only do we have to prepare for climate change, we also have to prepare for either negligence or wrongdoing. Okay, so this is something very, very important. So we can't take it for granted that if we only do very limited management, we can prevent these wildfires or forest fires. So we have to understand that we have to have a double approach. We have to prepare for the worst, okay, and hope for the best. But without proper preparation of the forest and forest management, and I will show you immediately the effects of this forest fire on the ecosystem and wildlife, it's not something that we might do, it's something we should do. Okay, so here are some pictures of the forest fire on day 2. And these are areas that have already been burned. I actually followed the fire from west to east because it was impossible to stand in the way of the firestorm, because in many cases it was simply too dangerous. So this is how the area looked from where the fire started. And you can see Shoresh and Bet Meir in the background, and this is the Kisalon Valley. Before I started my documentation, I drove up to Yael's house, and you can see the pink house, which is originally not pink, it's brown, but all the area was pink because of fire retardant that was sprayed on the moshav. So everybody's going to be surprised when they come back home. They're going to see their houses painted pink with fire retardant that basically saved their houses. And this is how it looks from the back. Now, this huge, enormous wall of smoke are basically pine trees. When pine trees burn, they create flames that are 15 to 30 meters high, with heat intensity that will melt anything. It is simply too dangerous to be in the vicinity of these flames. They're too dangerous to be by. And just to compare, this is the size of the flames of forest fire in Mediterranean woodland. The amount of vegetation and the percentage of sap and turpentine in Mediterranean woodland is much lower than in pine trees. So Mediterranean woodland burns, but it burns much slower. Okay, so this is very, very important to understand. Mediterranean woodland is adapted to seasonal fires. So not only it doesn't burn well, but it also regrows after it burns. And this is something that does not occur with pine trees. So what you see here is how Mediterranean woodland forest fires are dealt with. Very limited equipment. It can be usually managed. And this is one of the wardens in the nature reserve taking out some fire at the top of the hill. On the other hand, when you have to work with pine forests, this is how you have to combat them. with trucks, with cannons, and with aircraft. And usually this is not enough. So you understand that in order to have a sustainable woodland or forest in the Jerusalem hills, you have to manage towards the natural native trees. Otherwise, every year will be a fire fest. And this is what's happening during the last few years. The damage, of course, is very severe. Here you see our trail system in Mount Hayassim that leads to one of the most amazing springs we have in the Jerusalem hills. It's called Ein Tayassim. And the effect is, of course, on these amazing places that attract thousands of hikers. And this is how Ein Tayassim looked on on Wednesday morning. I came to check out the area. Luckily, it wasn't completely burned, but I managed to encounter one of the most, shocking moments of this wildfire forest fire. Is when I found out that, first of all, the area was severely burned all around. It wasn't only severely burned, but also you can see that the pine trees are adapted to fire in such a way that their acorns burst and seed much more efficiently in forest fires. So you could immediately see how the fire has kickstarted a new cycle of pine trees. And we'll talk about this very soon. The most depressing moment was when I got to the spring. I found out that all the chameleons that lived around the spring went into the water in order to cool down. And sadly, they could not survive because the temperature there peaked so high that they simply were all cooked in the water. So you can understand that this is something that is very, very hard to see. This was one of the only ones I found barely alive, and it did not survive much later. And these pictures went quite viral and emphasized how the fire affects the ecosystem. Most of the small animals perished in the fire. Luckily, the big animals, most of them escaped, but their future is not guaranteed because they lost their habitat. That means there are much more animals on the same territories or less territories further south. Now, after these pessimistic notes, I would like to talk about the positive note. And here you see how the Mediterranean trees are adapted to forest fires. This is about 2 or 3 months after a forest fire. These were taken in the Mount Carmel fire. These are two species of woodland trees, the Palestine oak and the other one, I think these are two Palestine oaks. And you can see that the root system is still alive. So it will take them between 5 to 15 years to grow back to the same size they were.
Here, may I interrupt you for a second? And as you explain a little bit more, because we're heading towards questions anyway, and there are a lot of questions, but I think you could cover some of them by expanding a little bit more on what you touched on in the beginning, which is why did Cacao plant pine trees? Are they native? Were there originally forests in these areas, and were they pine forests? And specifically, and this is probably what you're getting to as well, is there hope that they've stopped planting pine forests, and are they going to thin out the pine trees as they try to take over now to leave more room for the Mediterranean species? And mention those Mediterranean species as well. Thanks.
So as you can see, the Mediterranean woodland is alive. Although it's been completely burned on the surface, the whole root system is still alive, and all the trees that are unique to the region, like the Palestine oak and the strawberry tree, will regrow. But this is a big but. One of the main challenges is how to eliminate future danger of germinating pine trees. And this is an area that was burnt in the Mount Carmel fire in 2010. And you can see that the germination of pine trees is carpet-like, meaning that in 15 to 20 years' time, we're going to be in the same dangerous situation unless pine trees will be cut down, the seedlings will be treated very, very quickly. If this is not done, we will be facing the same problems, maybe even harsher problems in the next decades. So because pine trees are not a native species, they do occur in Israel in certain places, but not in their natural form. The pine tree approach should be that no pine trees should be planted unless in very restricted areas like camping sites or specific sites that do not pose danger. So this is a very, very important issue that I'm sure that when SPNI is involved in policy making, it will make a point of replanning the reconstruction of forests in such a way that they will not pose danger, not for people, especially not for wildlife. You must remember that we were at the end of the nesting season. The short-toed eagles have just fledged. That means a lot of them have perished during the fire because most of them were unexperienced juveniles. Quite a few hobbies, which are tree nesting falcon also that are in their peak breeding season. So we have to be very, very conscious about what we plant. If we plant, in most cases, no planting should be done. Only cutting down of germinating pine trees. The rest, nature can do very, very nicely by itself. So I hope I gave you some insights of where these fires originate. Basically, our influence on the landscape is very intensive, and the results are very intensive. That means that you must remember that until 1948, there was hardly any forest in the hills of Jerusalem. Most of the habitats were very dry and low bata, which is a habitat that is created by thousands of years of goat and sheep herding and burning, of regular burning by sheep herders. So these habitats changed completely when Israel was established, and we have to look back and first of all make sure that we have this unique composition of open habitats, maki, woodland, shrubland, and also Mediterranean forest, like in Mount Ayasim Nature Reserve. But we have to make sure that no pine trees are planted close to roads or in places where it's very easy to set fire, because we do have a security problem and we have to face that.
So Amir, let's zero in on a lot of questions coming in right now. I was going to say in the beginning, I didn't, but I thought I want to posit now that SPNI has long been advocating the stopping of planting of pine trees in Israel and thinning out pine trees that exist, not replanting pine forests for sure. And can we say that finally, after decades of hammering that into JNF, KKL, they finally understand and likely will be thinning this forest out And everybody wants to know, are they still planting pine trees in some places?
JNF have stopped planting pine trees, but you must remember that about, I would say, the area that was burnt is about a tenth of planted pine tree habitat that still exists and is still of great concern, because it can be easily torched, and the damage that can be done is tremendous. So not enough has been done to thin the pine forest groves. And I think this fire will advance this process, I hope, because if not, we're going to pay much higher prices in the near future.
Yes, you know, I would say that one of the successes, so it's a guarded success that they're beginning to change policy in cacao, if not totally. I think one of the interesting things I noticed was that the JNF in the US, this is about the first time we've had a major fire where they didn't immediately raise millions of dollars on a replant campaign. So they seem to have learned that replanting is not going to be what's happening, certainly not in the first couple of years while we all observe what's going on. And hopefully with our continued advocacy, there'll be the thinning of the pines and there will be pine trees planted. But people are asking, you know, wow, I've been supporting JNF and I've supported them in the past. What can they do now? You can support us, SPNI, Chevra Lagadat Teva, because when we plant a few trees in our communities and we're rewilding wetland habitats, for example, we plant them with a purpose in mind that's ecological. We mostly advocate for very, very sane and smart afforestation policies of the government, which is our role in this in the weird forestry system. There's no reason why a private organization should be in charge of Israel's forestry, and that is ultimately what needs to change. But Amanda's back on. I think we have a lot of questions, guys, that came up other than the stuff that's already been answered. Quick question, Amir, about the immediate forest management, or Amanda, if you know as well, from your gardening and botany background, was part of the problem just undergrowth and management of the way forests grow, and we should be doing it more professionally? And also somebody asked Murray in Toronto, why it's such a small area, why can't there just be monitoring of any smoke? And anytime there's a little bit of smoke, why aren't they on it right away? Why can't there be better monitoring of that and better enforcement of people not lighting campfires and stuff? Are the rangers out?
Well, first of all, I'll start with the last question. There are lookouts and there are wardens, but in midsummer when it's very hot and someone wants to torch a forest, it's very easy. And this has been a part of our reality during the last few years, where forests are torched. This is basically another type of terror attack. It's easy. It's easy to conceal. It takes time for you to identify, and the damage is usually severe. So it's a part of our reality. We have fire balloons in Gaza, and we have this type of fire attacks in central Israel. It happens. We know it happens. And second part of the question is why do we deal with it in such an awkward way? And this is something that's very typical to people. We always deal with things we know from the past, not from the future. So at this moment, Israel has 8 small airplanes that serve as an immediate response to forest fires. These are small aeroplanes, well suited to small fires. Israel should invest in a larger squadron, larger planes, because the danger of forest fires is growing. Instead of having one big forest fire per year, per summer, we have 3 or 4 or 5. The budget at the moment is not adapted to this intensity. So I think that in the near future, the budgets will grow, and also the technology that was used, for example, this first time, it was for the first time, unmanned aircraft were used to monitor the fire. So you can use unmanned aircraft to survey and monitor forests in the same way. So I think there's going to be a lot of change in the strategy of how you deal with this challenge, and definitely it's going to be more cost effective, because the price of such a fire, the fact that so many people have to leave their home, the damage to real estate is tremendous. So I think much more investments are going to go into this subject.
Thank you, Amanda. Did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say that relative to our tiny country, this is a huge tract of land that has gone, and it really is the green belt of Jerusalem, and that is what SPNI has been campaigning for many, many years, to save this green belt from development. And the fire, trees are planted by JNF far too close together because they work on a process of how many trees will survive, and too many of them actually do survive the planting. And so when they're so close together, they burn really, really fast. And the Tu B'Shvat that we all go out and we all want to plant the JNF forest, need to remember that native plants are what should be growing. That's what should be on these hills. We're used to seeing them now. Since JNF has been planting the pine forest, we're used to the idea of it being a pine forest. That's not what was originally there. It was originally oaks. Those are the kings of the hills that there should be. Mediterranean scrub can cope, as Amir has said, can cope with fire. And actually there is a process, there's the natural process all over the Mediterranean of fire and renewal.
When is that happening? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Amanda, but somebody just asked that as well in the questions. When will we see green, and what's the timeline for that renewal?
When will we see green?
No, what's the timeline for the renewal? We
will already see in the rains from this year. We will already see in the spring, we will see a green renewal already this spring. The fire speeds up the process of germination.
Okay.
So we will already see that. And it's, I came in 95 to Jerusalem to live in Jerusalem. I remember the fires in Shar Hagai. I remember the whole road burning. And I remember us having the same discussion. It hasn't changed. And really now is the time to say, that's enough. It shouldn't happen again. They cannot go, and we're lucky in a way that we're before Shnat Shemitah, that there's a year to break this, to stop this, because they won't plant in Shnat Shemitah.
Shnat Shemitah, Amanda is referring to the commandment in the Torah to leave the land of Israel fallow once every 7 years. And like a lot of things in Israel, the chief rabbinate in the state of Israel demand that in the state of Israel, certainly in all public sector events, the Kakal does not plant during Shemitah year. I looked on their website this week to see what they say. They have a chief rabbi in charge of cacao, and they can sprout saplings in the earth right up until the moment they are visible, and then they move the saplings to a piece of wood on top of the earth, and they're going to continue to sprout their saplings. But what about naturally? When do the saplings start, Amir? And when do they need to start looking at whether they can and how they're going to start thinning out the pine trees? Is that within the next year? Takes longer than that? And the Mediterranean oak and pistachio and the Katlav tree, I don't know how to say that in English. How long does it take for those trees to come back?
All the Mediterranean woodland species will start shooting up in the next few weeks.
Oh.
And they will race up during winter. They will reach, some of them can reach a meter-long branch in one winter, because remember, they have a root system of a mature tree. So they will race in order to reach enough leaves to start photosynthesis as soon as possible. So that's going to be very impressive. And germination depends on rain. Usually the second week of October are the first rains. And if they will be regular and good rains this year, the whole area will be completely green, and it will flower in an amazing way. And we must remember that the Mediterranean habitat has a lot of bulbs and onions that are stored, that are storing water and sugars in the ground, and they will flower from the beginning of autumn until the end of spring, and they will flower very in force because they have no one to use up their energy or give them shade. So they will. It's going to be an amazing winter and spring. So if you do manage to come to Israel, it's worthwhile coming and seeing how the hills of Jerusalem are coming back to life. It's an amazing sight to see a burnt up area rejuvenates.
Wow, that's amazing, Amir. And for those of us who can't get to Jerusalem, I'm sure you'll be documenting that for some of us, even those of us from Tel Aviv, who, you know.
I'm documenting. The photographs are regularly posted on SPNI's Facebook and Instagram. And if you like, you can follow my Facebook account. I give regular posts on wildlife matters in Israel, so you can.
Yeah, Amir Balaban is his last name. It's not written on his screen, but Balaban.
Yep.
Amir, Howard Wallach is asking, what about the denuded hillsides and winter rains? Could there be mudslides? A lot of erosion?
Mudslides are less of a problem because of the geology of our mountains. It's mainly chalk, so there will be no mudslides. But erosion intensifies after forest fires. There's nothing to hold the ground, so in some places there's depletion of ground, and it's basically the runoff takes a lot of good, rich soil downhill into the stream beds and onto the sea. So we lose a lot by these fires, and definitely when there are no plants holding or mitigating the effect of rain on the ground, there is a lot of erosion. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to finish up in just a minute or two. I want to say one more thing. People are confused about JNF policy. Tony Rabin writes. I'll just say the SPNI position for many years has been that the Kakal in Israel, Keren Kamet Israel, which in English is called JNF KKL, has erred in their afforestation policies, planting the wrong trees in the wrong places and harming Israel's biodiversity. I think we feel in general that over the last few years, they've acknowledged this to some degree, and now there's at least a discussion in public now about the thinning of pine trees rather than the planting of pine trees. But if you want to know if they're still planting pine trees, you should ask them. I would also say that JNF USA is a separate organization, except that their forestry policies seem to be exactly the forestry policies of Kakal in Israel. So, but JNF in USA does many, many important things other than afforestation, as does Kakal. But in terms of afforestation, which is our bailiwick in SPNI, we're very concerned still about their policies. So that's what I want to say on that. Amir, Amanda, any other? If we have other questions, little questions that haven't been answered, please, you can write us separately. You can find Amir, find us, Lawrence and I, of course. You have our mails. We'll be happy to answer anything. Amir, Amanda, any final thoughts?
I just want to say one thing. I'm not either Amir or Amanda. But I want to say just there's I guess we're an environmental organization. We're dealing with really serious issues involving science and regionality and internationality and locality. And I've seen in the chat like snarky comments about how there are fires in Greece and Turkey and they don't have the cacao. That's not the point. We as we discussed here, the Mediterranean region has fires. That is part of our cycle. However, the intensity of this fire, we shouldn't be getting such intense fires in our pine forests, which are artificially planted here. The intensity of the fires were caused by the dense pine trees. And I live in Modi'in, and I've seen fires this year. And I've debated with my friends whether they were caused by arson or by climate change, and what's worse, which is a pretty terrifying conversation to be having with my friends. And that's part of that's part of us living here, of our nature here, of the environment that we live in. But we can make it worse either by poor forestation policy or also by the climate crisis. And to have snarky comments doesn't help anyone. These are all very technical matters. How it is around the world is very, very different. We see we've seen in the moment what's going in, the heat dome in Canada, which is hotter than, hotter than Florida. We see wildfires in Siberia, which shouldn't be happening. As Jay said at the beginning, we see rain in Greenland for the first time in recorded history. We need to be looking at this in a totality of the seriousness of our situation, and not just have snarky comments like, oh yeah, there are fires in Greece and they don't have the pine forests. We know that, but that doesn't mean there's no reason for the intensity of the fires we just had now.
Great.
I'm just going to say that we need our green belt, and for our quality of life, for the quality of life of all all the nature around us. That's what's.
And now
it is absolutely ridiculous that at the moment we are fighting to save part of the Jerusalem forest, the Reches Levan, from destruction, from development. After this, it shouldn't be part of a government policy. If we are serious about fighting the climate crisis, we need to be protecting our trees. Last week, two Shabbats ago, we talked about not cutting down trees, not cutting down fruit trees when you're making a siege on the city. We should not be cutting down trees now. We should not, the government policy should not be to promote the Vatmal committee, whose basic role is to expedite plans around the concerns of environmentalists. We need to be looking at, we need to do everything we can to save our trees, to save our forests, to save our nature, not to cut it down. We need to have much, much more sustainable and clever planning.
Thank you, Lawrence and Amanda, for that. And I'll remind everybody about Yael, who had to leave early, but who's, facing real potential issues in terms of the future of that moshav and the ways to get out of it, and the money that needs to be found to repay the people who have lost businesses and homes there. And I just want to say that the whole issue is something that you know, we're dealing with on all kinds of levels. So it's important that we save the nature. And we also, my takeaway from the whole Reches Lavan building in Jerusalem is that, you know, we encroach on nature. As we, you know, who wants to live, when you see the intensity of the forest fires, who wants to live in a little village carved out from inside the forest? I mean, that's a recipe for bad management of forests and suburban development all over the world. And we don't need to repeat that here. Amir, final thoughts?
Yeah, just I'd like to finish with an optimistic note.
Please.
You know, we're called the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, but sometimes we need protection from nature because nature is very powerful. And we want to respect it and make sure we're on top terms with nature. So we got a reminder that humbled us during the last few days. And if we treat the Jerusalem forests with respect, I think we will have a much more safer time in the next few decades. So that's I think this is our challenge, and we're up for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lawrence, for the back office and for your insights. Amanda, thank you so much. Continue good work there in the Gazelle Valley. People visiting the Gazelle Valley Park in the future can find Amanda there. Please look up her and Yael, who we also thank so much for her participation and wish her well in the rehabilitation of her hometown, or Ramat Raziel. Amir, as always, great having you here. We'll be back in, Lawrence, when's our next webinar scheduled for?
We'll be back on September the 12th for live birding from across Israel at the earlier time of 5 Israel, which I think is 9 o'clock on the eastern coast. So the Sunday between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we are live birding. Amir, I think we'll be back in the studio in the Jerusalem Bird Observatory. And I'll probably be around to help as well. And it's going to be awesome. So hopefully we'll see everyone there. This is the last webinar before New Year, so Shalom Tova. Thank you very much for sticking with us all year. We'll be continuing at least until Pesach with a whole new schedule. And just thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you everyone for your support. We really, really appreciate it. And Amir and Amanda, thank you very much for coming and helping us out at the last minute. And Jay as well for another Sunday evening.
Thanks everyone. Bemet, Happy New Year to those who celebrate in a couple weeks. And a safe rest of the summer and early fall, free of natural and man-made disasters. So please, everybody, be safe, stay cool. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for all the questions, and let us know if we still need to answer things. We'll be happy to direct the answers to the right questions. Thanks, everybody, so much. Thanks for all your support. Thanks to all our board members, Leanne and Maggie, if you're still with us, and Jonathan, who's taking over, and Carl and everybody in Canada, and Linda and John and Norbert. We appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. Signing off from Tel Aviv and Mevaseret in Jerusalem and Modi'in.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.